So now, without further ado, I am going to present or give the microphone to Johanna. Johanna Rothman, known as the pragmatic manager, offers frank advice for your tough problems. She helps leaders and teams to do reasonably things that work. Equipped with that knowledge, they can decide how to adapt their product development. With her trademark practicality and humor, Johanna is the author of 18 books about many aspects of product development. Her most recent books are the Modern Management Made Easy series, From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams, and Create Your Successful Agile Project. Find a pragmatic manager, a monthly email newsletter, and her blogs at johanna.com and createadaptablelife.com. Without further ado, I'll give you Johanna.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. So what's very interesting is as I've been doing talks for all of these to talk about the books, to talk about why we need managers in an Agile transformation, why Agile cannot succeed without management. A lot of people have been asking me that they don't think we really need managers in Agile approaches. They still say, we don't really need managers, do we? We have self-managing teams. Well, maybe. I have to admit that most of the Agile teams I work with are not self-managing. They are not self-directing. They are barely able to discover what work they need to do and organize themselves as a team to do that work. Not because they're stupid. This is not about stupidity. It's because they are in a situation, an environment, a system that does not allow for self-organization or for self-directedness or for self-management. They are not able to do any of this work that would help their agility because the managers are in the way. And well, you might say, well, Johanna, you just told me why we don't need managers. Well, we actually do need managers for strategy, for managing the project portfolio, which implements the strategy, for deciding which products and services we want to explore. We need managers for the high level perspective about the organization. We need managers to create the environment where everybody can succeed at their various levels, right? I don't know if you've ever been in a project team, and I have, where one person wanted to really help everybody, so he did everybody else's work and did not do his. That project failed because he was not doing his work. So we don't need managers in the work, but we need managers to help create the environment where they can organize for the work. So I'm going to talk about performance evaluations later. We don't need them. They don't work. Fine. I will talk about them more later. What I see too much of, even in my really experienced Agile clients, is that a lot of what happens in management has very little to do with leadership and a lot to do with control. And that's why when I think about why management exists, I think about how can we offer more autonomy to people? How can we offer mastery and purpose, right? Everything that Dan Pink said. So I would like you to think about kind of this trilogy that managers manage themselves before they manage anybody else. I am sure every single person here has worked with somebody who was not able to manage themselves. And when that happens, It affects every single person around them and the environment. I would like you to think about how your actions affect how people feel, because people remember how you made them feel, right? Their feelings about you and the work way long after they have forgotten what the work is. And then think about how you act. How do you create and move towards a purpose? And I find that if we think about innovation as the reason that every organization exists, that's probably a really good way to get started. So there are 7 principles in these books. I'm not going to read you the principles. I'm going to tell you some stories. So let me first talk about how managers manage themselves. I have a picture here of the Satir congruence model, where you're supposed to balance yourself, the other, and the context, right? You as a person might feel any number of things. And when you blame other people for doing their work, and a lot of what passes for organizational rules and regulations, those are all a lot of blaming kind of actions towards the employees. So if somebody says, I can't get all my work done, and the manager says, why not? Right? That's blaming. That's disregarding the other person. Instead, why you might ask, why not? And that's when the other person says, well, you got me doing 14 things. I can't finish all 14. That does not make sense. So when we disregard other people, we end up blaming them. When we placate other people, we forget about ourselves. We only think of the other person. So if you've ever seen a lower level manager placate an upper level manager, right? The upper level manager says, get it done by April 1st. And the lower level manager says, can't happen that way. That's not going to happen. We can't do it. And the higher level manager has the finger of blame. Yes, you must. And the lower level manager says, fine, I'll try, right? That's placating. The super reasonable considers only the context and forgets about people altogether. That's where you hear people say, studies say pair programming works. Well, it does work. And if you are like one of the students in one of my classes last year, he actually said, you can tell me about pair programming, Johanna, until you're blue in the face. I'm not going to pair. I don't want to do it. Fine. So, and yes, of course, the slides will be available. So there are several manage yourself myths, and I'm going to talk about the indispensable employee. I have found, right, there are a ton of other myths. A lot of managers still believe in this 10x or indispensable employee business. Let me tell you a story from my misspent youth as a software developer. This is back when we did not even have Windows systems on computers. We only worked at the command line. I know this is a long time ago, but this myth is so pervasive that it's been around for years and years and years. Well, we needed a tool, actually an improved editor. There were 7 of us in the group. We needed an improved editor, and my manager said, well, why don't you all get together and discuss what you need? So we all got together on a Friday afternoon, and we started to talk about what we needed. And Steve, one of the guys, said, I'll start that this weekend. I'm happy to start it. And we all said, really? How about if we work on it together? No. I'll start it for you. I'll get it done. I'll just start it, is what he said. We all came back in on Monday morning. Steve had been there literally all weekend. He stank to high heaven because he had not even gone home to take a shower. He had not slept. But he presented us with this wonderful tool, so he said, except we couldn't use it because we were not him. So, and we couldn't change it because we had no idea what he had actually done. It did not make sense to us as he had coded it. He came back on Monday afternoon after he'd slept a little bit, and he was so surprised nobody was using his tool. But I made this for you, he said. And we said, can't use it. The worst part was the manager actually gave Steve a raise because he had really worked himself really hard. He was so indispensable. So I bet you've seen other iterations of indispensable. The person who only knows the speed and performance stuff, all the work queues up behind that person. The one person who understands the user interface or what the clients want or what the customers want, all the work queues up behind that person. So when managers reward heroics, when they reward indispensability, when they reward this supposed 10x employee, that's when they reinforce this behavior. And this behavior does not help anybody at all, right? We never actually used Steve's tool. We just could not. And he was not happy with any of us. So when I think about the principles for managing yourself, I like to think about for me as a manager, where do I add value? What is the purpose for my work here? How can I build empathy with the people who do the work? I think that the first thing there is when I assume that people know what they're doing. Now, will people not always know what they're doing? Absolutely. But if you extend empathy, you are much more likely to help them realize that they need to talk to you, right? And say, I don't really know what's going on. When you build empathy and then build a safe environment, especially when you admit that you don't know, that allows other people to admit that they don't know or that they need help. So every time I've either asked for help or admitted I don't know, I have created a more safe environment all over. And that's been really helpful. Somebody is unmuted. Whoops. Yeah, Gil. If managers stopped talking about people as resources, empathy would definitely have a place. Pepe, if you can please figure out who's not muted and mute them. So there's more principles here, and let me just talk about optimizing for an overarching goal. The business of delegating problems and outcomes, not tasks. That's a huge thing. I still see agile teams where people dole out tasks, right? There's this story, which might or might not be a story, and people take tasks underneath it instead of having the responsibility either as a team or as several people to deliver that story, and they decide how to deliver it. So when I think about the principles for managing myself, I get to think about how my actions affect the culture. So let me talk next about great managers and how they lead and serve others. So managers is about leading and serving, and leading and serving is not directing and controlling. And I think a lot of our organizational policies reinforce directing and controlling as opposed to leading and serving. So I would like you to add in the chat, and I will try and expand my chat so I can see. I would like you to think back to the best manager you had. I don't care who that person was or how long you worked there. I would like you to write in the chat, how did you feel when you worked there? And do you remember the work or the teams? Empowered, excited, valued, inspired, a lot of inspired, respected, appreciated, energized, responsible, valued and supported. Okay, lots of really really wonderful. Now, do you remember the work or the teams? Oh, invested in. I really like that, Ash. Yep. Do you remember? Oh, so teams, both work in the team. The team, we're still friends 20 years later. Oh, nice. Challenge. Definitely teams over work, teams more than the work. This is, I often find when I ask these questions that people remember the teams. They remember the people and sometimes a manager. So now I want to ask you to take just one of your terrible managers. How did you feel when you worked there? And do you remember any of the work except to remember how you felt about it? Miserable? How do I decide so many? Manager, destructive, overworked, no idea whether I fit in, stressed, micromanaged, stressed, yeah, defensive, exploited, unappreciated. And what do you remember do you remember any of the people you worked with? And do you remember any of the work, or do you remember just the feelings about the work? So this is the what do you remember question. Oh, we all banded together against a bad manager. I really like that. Yeah. I was the 10X. I remember nothing. Oh, yeah. Lots of negative feelings. A little of the work. Feelings and impact on life because of those feelings. Just the feelings about the manager. So when I ask about the best manager, people have wonderful memories. There are people who say, I remember these people even 20 years later. Well, Peter says I had a fine team that worked together well, despite the manager, right? Sometimes I have to admit that there are people where they are so I will use the word irritating because I'm not sure if people are literally evil, but it felt that way to me when I think about this particular manager. So he was so irritating. I literally don't remember any of the work, but I certainly remember all of the feelings. So there. So what I find is that a lot of outdated management assumptions really color management actions. So if I don't know how familiar you are with theory X and theory Y. This is back in the 50s. So McGregor had this theory that certainly some people avoid work. They need to be controlled. They don't want responsibility. Money motivates them, and they have no creativity except for getting around the rules. Now, what's really interesting, so my dad is 91, and I speak with him every single day because COVID. And when I said to him, I was talking about theory X and theory Y, and I said people really want to master their work. They can manage themselves. They seek responsibility. They want to accomplish something that's greater than they are. They're creative. And he said all of the words in theory X. And I said, Dad, you didn't treat my sister and me like that at home. You treated us as if we wanted to master things and that we were creative and that you insisted that we take responsibility. He said, you weren't working in a factory. So think about what factory work is, where other people control all your actions. And there are still managers who are trying to manage the environment for knowledge work in the same way that people used to manage factory work, which does not make sense. So let me just say this. Most of us get up in the morning and we get ourselves dressed and fed and ready to go to work, right? We don't even have to drive to work anymore. We just get on Zoom or go into Slack or do something in Teams. And we figure out how to do the job. In fact, COVID has the one good thing, I'm not sure that this is really good, but we have seen that we are able to live with all these challenges. We have, some of us have mastered challenges more than others. I, for one, do not have children at home, for which my children are very happy. My children are all grown. Those of you with elementary school children, I have no idea how you're doing this every single day. However, you manage to get the job done. You take responsibility for the work and the relationships. Almost all of us enter into long-term contracts, sometimes with people, as in spouses or partners, sometimes with mortgages, sometimes with anything else. So people can do the job. And if you expect people to do the job, they might tell you that they need support or training, but they will definitely live up or down to your expectations of them. So the more you expect people to do their job, and the more you create an environment where you say, I don't know, or I need help, or can you offer me some coaching? And it's totally fine as a manager to ask anybody for coaching, the more likely people will do the same with you, right? So modern management is not about taking care of people. It's about taking care of the environment. So there's all kinds of leading and serving other myths. And you can put in the chat, do you want me to talk about keeping marginally useful people on the team, or talk about performance reviews or evaluations? So tell me performance reviews, or tell me keep the ungellers or the marginally useful people. I see one I see two. Okay, I'm going to do performance management in our Q&A later. Ask me about marginally useful people. So I've been a consultant for well, let's see. I've been working for over 40 years, which is kind of wacko. And yeah, many years. When I think about, I received I received one really good piece of feedback that happened to occur in a performance review. And I know that Gil is here. Gil and I have worked together before, and I'm gonna tell a story about me, and Gil is gonna die laughing. Okay, my manager at the time said to me, Johanna, you finish the projects 96%, 97%, maybe even 98%. You don't get it all the way over to done. And Gil and I have talked about my insufficient, my detail or lack of detail orientedness. So this is not a surprise. And I found that feedback really helpful. So I asked him, oh, the project I just finished last month? He said, no, all the projects this year. I said, the one in January? Yeah. The one in March or in April? Yeah. The ones in over the summer that I stayed here and cut short my vacation for? Yeah. And the ones now? Yeah. I said, why did you wait so long to tell me? Were you saving it up for me? So I got really good feedback. My manager got really good feedback. I still have trouble finishing. Gil is probably laughing crazily in his office. However, I have checklists. I know how to finish stuff now. I just don't like it very much. So the feedback I got was terrific, right? Very helpful feedback. The performance review itself, I've had performance reviews that said, your goals are to deliver projects X, Y, and Z. And then 2 months later, or even 4 weeks later, all my goals changed. And it was not about the projects. The management had changed the project portfolio. I should not work on those projects anymore. I needed to work on other stuff, which was fine. But then you go into a performance review and you say, So now what? Right? I delivered what you asked me to deliver, and it's not what you said I was supposed to deliver 12 months ago. So we know that performance reviews actually damage relationships and performance. We have 25 years of research about this. Excuse me. And if you want the references, I'm happy to send them to you later. Right? We have years and years and years of research about this. However, for some reason, HR loves performance reviews because they think that the performance review helps them with employee engagement and performance management. Well, performance management is another um, um, lead in innovation, innovative organization myth. But just think about this: how much money do you actually get to spread around as a manager? Especially when we don't have inflation, it's between 1% and 3% of all the payroll. So we go through all this aggravation for between 1% to 3%. That's crazy, and it does not lead to pay parity. So there's all kinds of problems with performance reviews. And remember to ask me about marginally useful people when we get to the Q&A at the end. So when managers don't lead and serve, they are totally incongruent. They don't respect the people that they're supposed to be leading and serving. They have insufficient empathy, and the work really feels like drudgery. You feel like Sisyphus just pushing that boulder up the hill. So if I think about the principles for leading and serving others, and remember that this is how people remember how you made them feel, not so much what the work is. And when you create a great environment where people really can lead and where you can lead and serve others, or the manager leads and serve others, now you have a real shot. So I'm going to start with building a safe environment here. I have found that when managers teach feedback and coaching, that feedback and coaching is not something that's totally in the purview of the manager. The manager helps support the feedback and coaching all throughout the team. And what does your team need? If you have an agile team, you're supposed to be self-organizing, or at least self-directed. You need to be able to offer each other feedback and coaching. If you don't know how, you really have a problem. So part of the ability to and to encourage experiments and learning is to be able to understand how to give each other feedback so people don't get upset or angry. Now, let me talk about seeking outcomes by optimizing for an overarching goal. I'm going to talk about flow efficiency a little bit later, but think about performance reviews also do it's all about what the individual offers to the organization, or even but not to what the individual offers to the team. And the problem is agile approaches work when you work in flow efficiency as a collaborative team. Again, you don't have to be like that guy in my workshop who said I'm not ever pairing with anybody. And then when I talked about mobbing, he just rolled his eyes. Yeah, I'm not him, right? But he was able, when I actually asked him more questions, he said, well, I guess if somebody wants some help, I'm happy to do that. Yeah. And I said, what if you actually need help? Oh, I'm happy to ask for help. Okay. So I didn't call it pairing in that sense, but he was actually pairing under certain circumstances. When we think about flow efficiency and thinking about working as a team, right? What is the whole team working together? That's where we can create this harmonic whole, as Drucker actually said. So I have found also then, when I'm going to talk about exercise your value-based integrity, you will have decisions. If you are a manager in any kind of a team, You will have decisions that make it easier or harder for you to talk both to your managers and to serve and lead the people you who report to you. I really hate that report to you business, but I will just take that for now. If you do not stand up to other people who want you to do something that violates your personal integrity, you will, and God knows there were plenty of times when I said to my husband, I regularly called Mark when I was a manager inside the organization, as opposed to being a consultant, where I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a job in a couple of hours. And I could hear him roll his eyes, and he would say, what did you say now? Who did you say it to? Because you all, I feel like a lot of you here actually know me. You know, I'm known for my frankness. I'm known for my big mouth. So, yeah. But if you don't keep your value-based integrity, if you give in to a bully, it's really a problem. So, I'm not going to tell you you must always stand up to a bully, because if your family has health insurance through your job, you might say, Johanna, you can talk about standing on my integrity all day long. I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do. I I totally get that. I'm not saying you are a bad person for that. I am saying think about where you can create your value-based integrity and make those difficult decisions. So the third point is that great managers lead for innovation. And I found that Peter Drucker's quote here was actually very interesting. He said, every organization needs one core competence, innovation, and innovation in management practices. So think about where the managers in your organization spend their time. I often see managers spending a lot of time in the tactical actions. They're talking about execution. So the C level has fingers into the director level. The director level has fingers into the first line level. The first line managers have fingers into the teams. And this is where managers actually say, well, we'll just use this framework, or we'll copy what other people do, right? They are not thinking, they're thinking about the tactical approach as opposed to thinking strategically about all their work. And now you might say to me, I'm a first line manager. How much strategic thinking do I need to do? And I will say, you need to first line managers might actually have the worst job of all. You have to be able to think farther out so you can say, do I have enough people to do the work? Do I need to think about splitting this team? When do I need to ask the team what they think? Where do I talk to product people? Does it make sense for me to stay out of it? Does it make sense for me to go into it? You have to, and it's all because you need to do the service for your team for that overarching goal, right? So first line managers have a really tough problem, but the middle managers need to start planning the project portfolio for now and for later, and to think about the products for now and for later. And that's because all this stuff answers the why question. Why are we here? What is the purpose of this organization? So thinking about how do you execute in the short term and still think long term. That's where managers need to spend their time. And this is really hard work. This is not easy. So there's all kinds of organizational leadership myths. Um, I I will talk about the 100% utilization. So back when I was as an engineer in one of my jobs, one of my managers said to me, I would like you to work on project A 50% of the time, project B 15% of the time, project C 5, no, 50, 35, and 15. Yeah. And I said, do you know what 15% is? He said, it's a few hours. I said, yeah, and I'm not going to be able to work on Project C when everybody else is working on Project C. And when I'm working on Project A, it's all going to be, I won't have the people I need. He said, oh, but I need all of them done. This is the problem, right? I need all of them done means that management is not thinking about how to make the hard choices for the project portfolio. So, and if you think that people need to be utilized, right? This is 100% utilization. I need Johanna at 100%. I need Pepe at 100%. I need Sean at 100%. I need Gil at 100%. I need Amy at 100%. But when do we all work together? When do we have time to talk together? So 100% utilization does not work for machines, does not work for highways. All of us here, yeah, Eben says a highway at 100% utilization is gridlock. Absolutely. It's the same thing with people. Now, this particular myth got started way back when, even before I was even before I was starting to work, because we had time slices for machines. So we actually wanted computers because they were such a scarce resource to be utilized 100%. Totally makes sense. I understand that. But that does not translate to people because every time you have to think about a task or a project or anything and then put it down to start something else, you do not swap out in the same way that computers do, right? Computers can make a copy of what's in memory and put it someplace safe and then swap it back in. People do not do that. In fact, back when I was a software developer, I always said to my bosses that every time they asked me to multitask, I could guarantee that as soon as I put something down, when I went back to pick it up, I created a defect. That's how easy it was for me to get sidetracked. And I believe that the data shows, I need to find this research so you don't think I'm being incongruent here, that anytime we have an interruption, it can take anywhere from half an hour to a couple of hours to get back into the work at the same level of detail that we had before, right? Where we have all the context in our brains. So this also says there's a really good reason for short stories and for the people to actually work together. But if you work for people that really believe in utilization, it's a really big problem. So I really like to say it's time to embrace the organization's messiness. When I speak or work with more senior managers, and they often say, "Why can't I manage by spreadsheet?" And doesn't lower salaries mean lower project costs? All that stuff. I actually ask them, "Why do they feel this way?" And they say, "Well, I really want to be able to iterate on this strategy." And I say, good, then let's make smaller projects, smaller pieces of work, more frequent experiments, all that stuff. If you plan for change, as opposed to planning to manage change, you are much more likely to be able to get to where you want to go. And that's actually scary because all of the myths on the previous slide, those are all about predictability. So if you work in an organization that embraces predictability, right? We want plans, we want estimates, we want all this stuff. It's going to be a lot harder to manage for change, to plan for change, because you're trying to take all the change out of the equation. So let me say a little bit about the innovation principles. I find that when I work with senior managers, too few of them actually understand the why for the organization. The why defines the strategy. Why is this organization in business? Why? Who do they know who the customers? Have they chosen the customers they serve? All that stuff. So if you understand the why for the organization, you are much more like, and you explain it to people. Oh, and it's not return value to the shareholders. That's just the most stupid thing I've ever heard. You can return value to shareholders, to stakeholders, or whomever if you have great products that customers buy. And how do you get great products that customers buy? By having a satisfied workforce. Not happy. Happy is all about something else, right? I can be satisfied at work and be dreadfully unhappy, but I can be satisfied at work and do a good job in my job, right? So let's stop with the happiness. There's too much about happiness that's totally irrelevant to work, but it's people's satisfaction with the work, with their work, with the product, with their work, with their team, with the environment. That totally makes sense. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have had to deal with bureaucracy in the organization. I'm almost afraid to ask. I did work for one client who said to me, "Oh, we want you to come down here, do an in-person class." Yes, this is before COVID. I said, "I'm happy to do it." They said, "If you want us to pay your expenses," and they insisted that I separate the expenses from the workshop fee. Yeah, people, right? Bureaucracy. I said, "Fine." My contact there said, "You need to take a taxi. You cannot take a fixed price limo. You can't take an Uber or Lyft. You need to take a taxi for everything." And I said, "Well, I mean, you realize that fixed price limos are often cheaper than taxis to and from the airport?" Yeah, yeah, no, we don't accept that. You must take a taxi. So I took a taxi there from the airport to the hotel. And the next morning, I was I was down in the lobby an hour early. I was ready. I was excited to go to the client. I called for the taxi. Taxi got there. Taxi put all my stuff in the trunk, and then the wind closed the doors. The taxi driver had left the keys in the ignition. I was not able to get to the client on time. In fact, I was an hour late. So they paid the price of every single person sitting there for an hour, and I paid the price in aggravation because they did not want to reimburse anything other than taxis. That was my last taxi ride at that client. I figured I don't care if they reimburse me. They did reimburse me for everything, and the taxi rides were much more expensive than anything else. So bureaucracy is about somebody did something bad 15 or 25 years ago, and we are all still paying for it now. Or we're afraid of a risk, and so we have bureaucracy to manage risks. Does not work that way. So one of the things I would also like you to think about it, how do you build a safe environment? When I first wrote these principles, I was talking about psychological safety. But I mean, we're here in Massachusetts, and this is Agile New England. We can see people are trying to deal with physical safety, going back to work or going into the office. We're trying to deal with psychological safety. The best way to build a safe environment is to decriminalize mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Some of us more often than others. Everybody makes mistakes. So why do we say to people, don't do that again? How can we learn from those mistakes? So there's all kinds of stuff about these innovation principles. Now, I've talked about resource efficiency and flow efficiency. So resource efficiency is the bottom picture where people work alone, where the work assignment comes in, The first person does their thing, then they hand off to the next person who does their thing, they hand off to the next person who does their thing, and the problem is there are almost always delays in the handing off, right? So every person works alone. When you work in flow efficiency, the team works together. Now, is it always the entire team? Maybe not. Maybe if you have 6 people on your team, you might have 3 people work on one item, 3 people on another. Maybe you have 3 pairs, right? But you're not waiting for other people to do their job. And now the question is, what does your organization reward? In agile organizations, we really want to reward flow efficiency, but organizations are set up to reward resource efficiency. This is a huge, huge problem. I have found that when I do, okay, way back in the 80s, when I was a manager and my bosses actually gave me a reward, $10,000, which in the 80s was actually a lot of money, and said, JR, you did a great job on this project. This is your reward. I said, I wasn't on the project. I was the manager that facilitated that project. I should not get this money. And they said to me, oh, just take it. Yeah, that did not really fit for me. So I went to the team, 5 people on the team. I said, okay, you got this $10,000 reward. They're trying to give it to me. It's not mine. I'm giving it to you. How do you want to split it up? And of course, my management thought I was crazy for asking the team. And the team said, so one person actually said, I'll give it to her, right? Linda was the one who had really shepherded the product along. She acted as if she was a product owner, except she was a technical writer, right? So really, really shepherding the business value, the customer value, all this really good stuff. And so when this guy said, Linda should get 50% and the rest of us should split the rest. And Linda said, no, 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 we need to all split it equally. And the other people all said, no, Linda deserves 50%. So fine. I said to HR, because they were in charge of this, Linda gets 50%, the rest gets divided evenly among the other people, and I get nothing. You get nothing. No, I didn't deserve anything. So what was interesting there is that Linda said, let me take you all out for dinner at a really nice Boston restaurant. So we all went up and she invited me and Mark, which is great. So we all had a wonderful dinner on her and everybody was happy. We can reward based on flow efficiency. And even if we have some individual rewards and some team-based rewards, we can work to get to more flow efficiency and reward that. But if we persist on resource efficiency and only rewarding resource efficiency, that's what we're going to get. So it turns out that a lot of these myths come from slavery. And then I don't know about you, knowledge work is not the same as factory work, and it's definitely not the same as slavery. So if you have not read Rosenthal's Accounting for Slavery, I highly recommend it. It's horrifying, literally horrifying. When we think about these myths and we think about this kind of cost accounting, then we see problems in management thinking. We think that divide and conquer works. Well, you can divide some of the work, but some of the work is coherent. You need to keep it together. So you cannot even easily divide it among people. You need to have people attack the work together. We don't want inventory, right? Resource efficiency leads to inventory. And while we might have to report cost accounting, we do not have to manage our businesses with cost accounting. all of these problems are antithetical to agile approaches. So I said before that managers create and refine the culture, and a first-line manager creates and refines the culture for individuals and teams, for groups, for the middle managers create and refine the culture, senior managers create and refine the culture. Everybody has their level of influence. So Shine talks about artifacts, values, and assumptions. I swear that he just confuses me. If I like to think about culture as how do people treat each other? What can people discuss? And what does the organization reward? If you think about those three things, that's a shortcut for thinking about the culture. And that totally makes sense. And you can see how what kinds of things managers reinforce and do not reinforce. So Gruner and Whitaker said this in School Culture, easier for me to say, School Culture Rewired. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. So think about the worst behavior. And that's, if your leaders are willing to tolerate that, that's the culture you have. So I've talked a lot about various kinds of management habits you might attack. I think of attack. You probably don't think of attack. I really like to talk about progress, not perfection. We cannot be perfect. We are human. Some of us are altogether too human. And I am not asking you to change your beliefs. I'm only asking you to think about changing 1, 2, or 3 behaviors, probably one behavior at a time. Think about which behavior you would like to address. I had to start with asking for help. I was really, really terrible at asking for help. I was pretty good at admitting I didn't know, but asking for help, oh yeah, I would have to pull teeth before I would say, can you help me? I'm better at that now. I still need to work on that. And wherever it is you start, remember that people remember how you made them feel. And if you don't know why this organization exists, nothing else matters. So I hope that you stay in touch with me. I have an email newsletter called The Pragmatic Manager. I would love to link with you on LinkedIn, and the Modern Management Made Easy books, which I'm very proud and excited about, are on this slide. And I will thank you, first of all, and let me stop the share so I can see your happy faces and look in the chat. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Johanna. We are going to remain or open the floor for questions and answers. So feel free, folks, to either type them. We'll try to answer as much as we can, but also feel free to just speak up. The floor is yours.
Did people want me to address the ungeller, marginally useful? Yes, I will do that now, Susan. Thank you. So imagine you have a marginally useful person. Let me tell you the story I often tell. I was I think I was a director of several things at this company, right? And I really needed somebody who could manage. This is way before we had continuous integration and continuous deployment. So I wanted my team to be able to do continuous integration and continuous deployment inside the building. So I needed a release person, right? Somebody to shepherd the builds, somebody to kick off the daily build. I had plans. I was going to go to 3 times builds every single day. Yeah. So I brought somebody in called Susan, who is not the Susan who asked me, right? but I always call this person Susan. And she came in, and the first couple of weeks were pretty good. She was a little bit abrasive, kind of like me, right? She told people what she thinks. She she had opinions about everything, and she got progressively more and more and more abrasive. So I finally gave her feedback and said, I'm in these meetings with you. I'm finding that your abrasiveness is really not helping the situation. Please don't blame people. Here's an example of blame. Here's what I would like you to say instead. Here's an example of where you were kind of nasty. Here's what I'd like you to say instead. So I was working with her on a fairly regular basis. And she actually said to me, this is really helpful feedback. Okay, I feel like I'm doing my job. The third week, on a Friday afternoon, everyone except for Susan came to me and stood in my office in the door. I said, "What's going on? Is there a mutiny?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Either Susan goes or we go. You got 2 days to deal with this. We are leaving now." It was 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. "We are leaving now. We're not coming back until Monday when we're all going to go out and drink beer, and we're not inviting you." I thought, oh, now I've really screwed up. So I had another conversation with Susan. I said, I think that there are more things that are happening in this team. And she said, "Well, yeah, I had a little dust up yesterday." And then she described it to me. So I said, "Okay, this is not working out. I've given you feedback several times. Your behavior has not improved, and therefore we need to talk about you finding another job. How can I support you finding another job?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, she said, "Are you firing me?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Don't you need HR?" I said, "Yeah, I will get HR, but let's talk. Let's start this conversation because you are not staying here, right? I am not going to keep an unjeller in my organization. If I have to pay you to stay home, I would rather do that. You are not coming back on Monday. How can I pay you? How can I support you to find another job?" So she was kind of taken aback by this. Most people would be. And I said, "Think about it over the weekend. Let's talk, not in person. Let's talk by phone on Monday." So we talked, and she said, "I feel like I'm in over my head in your group." Okay, fine. This would have been better if she told me about it earlier, but she didn't. So I said, "How can I support you in finding another job?" Notice I keep saying these words, right? How can I support you? And she finally said, um, "I don't know. How can you support me?" I said, "I can talk to my competitor across town. I can look at your resume. I can give you the names of the recruiters I often use. I can Those are three options. Which of them would you like?" She said, "You would help me find a job at your competitor?" I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." So I called him. I said, "I have problems, right? She's not gelling with the people in this team." He said, "That's okay, Johanna. I don't know why you insist on this teamwork business," right? So don't, yeah, Ed, I can see Ed laughing. Yeah. And I said, I like teams, right? I really like working with teams and supporting teams. And he said, "I'll take her." So I connected the two of them, and by Tuesday morning she started there. And as far as I knew, she stayed there for 5 years. So my culture was wrong for her. His culture was right for her. And when you have an unjeller, when you have someone who cannot do the job, you got to get rid of them. And even if you pay them to sit there and do nothing, you take them away from your team, right? An agile team is a unit, right? A unit. You got to take them away from the team and let the team do their work. My team, even though they did not have continuous integration and what I wanted for the build system, they were able to finish their work faster, and they figured out how to do what I wanted them to do. So this is there's always another way. And if you have a manager who says, what's Susan doing over there, over in the corner where we're paying her to do nothing? You say, I'm paying her to stay away from my team. You just leave her alone or you fire her, right? Do not keep her. This is how people move from job to job to job in the same company, getting 1 year of experience 20 times. Just craziness. Okay. I got a little excited there. Yeah, it was totally a bad fit. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. And thank you for letting me. Yeah, I know. We need to change Susan's name. Yeah. Other questions in the chat, please.
I have a question, Johanna. So one of your slides, it said that you create a safe environment when one admits, I don't know. And I'd like to know if you could, or what is your take on sort of for all those conventional managers that it's hard for them to admit a mistake. I feel that both admitting that we don't know and admitting a mistake and ask for input from your direct reports or colleagues also contributes to a safe environment. Any reaction to that?
So I have found that when I ask for help or say that I made a mistake, and that other people feel freer to say, oh, I'm having a little trouble over here. So every time people can admit that they are having a little trouble, we can explore the situation better. That's a signal that that a problem is either occurring or has occurred. And I really like small problems. I don't like big problems, right? So the more we can admit our mistakes and say, this is one of the reasons I really like what Dave Stone calls small, safe to fail experiments. How small a thing can we do to get a little feedback on it? Management needs to do that also. So I talked about big things like changing the performance management system and doing away with performance evaluations. What if there was a way to assess people's satisfaction and a team's throughput on a regular basis without having to do performance evaluations? Well, you might say, first let's teach everybody how to offer feedback. Let's teach everybody how to offer coaching. Let's look at the team's throughput, their cycle time, and see what happens with that over time, and ask them about their satisfaction with their product. So, or with their work, with the product. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. So if you don't know about Lewin's equation, that for a person's behavior, that's the B, is a function of the person in the environment, right? We are much more likely to blame people for their behavior. But that's totally a function of the person in the environment. And that's the culture and the system of work, all that stuff. So if I start to change the culture by saying, I am worried I have made a mistake, or I made a mistake, I own it, right? Or I need help. That makes it safer for everybody else who is in my circle of influence to make that same, to talk about their mistakes. The more you can talk about them, the easier it is to deal with them. That's how you create psychological safety. Okay.
Thank you.
There
are some questions in the chat. Would you like me to, you want to go through them, or?
Well, I was going to talk about the portfolio management problem and leaders who want it all. So I have found that a lot of managers do not realize what the capacity for their teams are, right? They have, in fact, I have a client, a very large client, who really wants to do, call it 400 projects. They have 200 teams. I mean, easily you can tell 200 of those projects should not get done, right? Not half time, just cut them off, right? Don't even try those. And that means that every project only gets one team. Well, what if there are 5 really important projects and there are 355 okay, public arithmetic, just like details, right? So if I have 200 projects and there are 5 really important ones, should you put all 200 teams on those projects? Maybe, maybe not, but certainly more than one team per project for the 5 projects, for the 5 most important projects, right? This is why I wrote the project portfolio book. Manage your project portfolio, increase your capacity, and finish more projects for this very reason. So having more projects in flight does not matter. And the people who don't want to make those kinds of decisions are not leaders. They are controllers. They control what people do. I'm not even going to call them managers because they're not managing. They're not managing the system of work. They're not managing what work gets done and when. They're not making any of the difficult decisions. They are controlling what people do. So if you need more, I don't remember who asked for that one. If you email me a little bit later, I can, or you just look on my blog for project portfolio management in the word cloud. That's probably good enough. Oh, let me take this bureaucracy from regulation and compliance also. So what I found really interesting for some of my regulated industry clients is that they have assumptions about what the auditors need. And now some of those assumptions are correct. However, most of those assumptions are outdated and incorrect. So I have found that it's almost always worth asking, do you need this information? And is this the right way for you to need this information? So some of my regulated industry clients still want me to itemize all my expenses. I often say to them, I don't do that anymore. I just here's the price. Here's the fee. I don't do that. They said, well, we think our auditors need to know. I said, so it's 0 for travel, 0 for expenses, 0 for food, just 0 for all that. And they said, oh, I don't think we can do that. I said, ask them, because I think that you can. So part of it is, where is the compliance coming from? And I don't know always where it comes from, but often it's people who are well-meaning, who want to make sure nobody, no auditor, no regulatory body has anything but good stuff to say about this company. But I often find that you can do this another way. So, and I think, David, that's part of the problem. How many alternatives can you imagine for getting rid of a challenging regulatory compliance problem? And sometimes you just cannot. Right. So fine.
Quick time check. It's like 15. Probably a couple more questions. There are 2 questions that are very similar. I'm going to read one to you, Johanna, and then take a stab at it. How does one advance the great technical person who would be worse than useless as a manager?
So I am working on a new set of blog posts and a new presentation about this very problem, right? So you might have noticed one of the myths is we must promote the best technical person to be a manager. So that takes a great technical person away from the team and imposes a horrible manager. So part of the problem is you need to actually have real, honest to God career ladders, where they are dual track. They don't just end part way up the management chain. They have to go all the way up the management chain. So I wish I knew when I keep thinking I will know enough about the follow-on post to be able to post the first one, but I think it's really important to say, how do we reward people for staying technical, especially if they're going to be horrible managers? Because we do not want them as managers. So for me, it's the parallel tracks and how we actually evaluate there. I'm in the soup too. How do we help people assess where their talents and capabilities are now?
Okay, so Margaret Natario wrote, who's responsible for teaching the team how to give each other constructive feedback?
So I actually think that's the manager's job, right? The manager says, I want an environment where all of us understand how to receive and offer feedback. And I want an environment where all of us understand how to offer and receive coaching. That's very important to me. So as part of the modern management cohorts I'm planning later on this year, because I need to get all the stuff together, part of it is I will be leading labs that then people can bring back to their organizations, where here is how you create a feedback lab. Here's how you create a coaching lab. I actually talk about it. I say it in the books. I mean, for the price of the book, you can see what I'm going to say. So I'm not holding anything back. But I think the manager, if the manager wants an environment where you have a lot of freedom to give and offer feedback, then the manager has to lead with that and say first. And if most people don't know how to offer effective feedback, so let's help them learn.
David Rosenberg asked, you have a lot of good suggestions for managers. How can someone help their unwilling higher level manager to adopt some of your suggestions?
A willing higher level or unwilling?
Unwilling.
Oh, if you have an unwilling higher level manager, what I have done in the past is created boundaries around my teams and groups and said, you don't get to inflict your pain on me. But an unwilling higher level manager, no. That person has to, you can offer options to that person. You can suggest that they read stuff. I suggest that you start with stories. People are much more likely to connect with stories, but maybe give them this video. But no, people who already think that they know everything, you're not going to make any impact on them unless there's a slight opening where they say, I would like to know something about that. Because otherwise you're inflicting change on people. And was it Peter Senge who said people don't mind change, they really resist being changed? So yeah.
Okay, maybe one more, unless I'm gonna wait until see if anybody from the audience would like to ask directly. Floor is
Well,
yours.
Margaret actually asked this question. I find that highly technical people just want more freedom and self-determination, not responsibility for others. And are you asking me, what do I want? I want it all. So I always wanted freedom in my work. As long as I was delivering something that the customer would want, I wanted self-determination. This is the autonomy, mastery, and purpose thing. I look for it now. I mean, the reason Gil was laughing earlier about me and my lack of attention to details is because while I want all this stuff, I still need, when I work with a partner, I really need to make sure I have accountability with that partner so that I know what I'm supposed to do. So it's not that I want to inflict any of this stuff on other people. I want it for myself. And there was another question. Oh, for resource efficiency versus flow efficiency, how much project lifecycle matters? So in a strict waterfall, where you must do all the design and you have designers up front, and then you have analysis. Well, I don't even remember what waterfall is. Architecture first, and then analysis, and then design, and then coding. I know that, Jeannie, you have other stuff, and then testing. If you have specialists who are only available to the project at certain times, that's resource efficiency kind of magnified. So it's not so much the resource efficiency thinking is if you have resource efficiency actions where you only have people for a short time in that particular life cycle, that's a really big problem. Okay. All right, Pepe, I will stop now.
Very well.
Unless
Thank
you want
you
me
very
to
much.
keep going.
It's up to you. I think there's an interesting question, and we can sort of like close the cycle with that, because I'm curious to know as well. Peter asked, tell us about your worst manager and how you handle that situation. And we can close that out. We can close the session with that.
When I was a bad manager or my worst manager?
Your worst manager.
Oh, so 36 years ago, November, I was a small project. I was a project manager and senior developer for a 3-person project. I had another software engineer who worked with me and a mechanical engineer because we had to put a fixture together for a machine vision system. Our customer was in Detroit, right, a car manufacturer. I had gone to great lengths and many, many, many trips out to Detroit to talk with the customer. And while I was gone, the mechanical engineer and the software engineer did a great job, right? I was kind of extra at this point because I was doing so much customer management as opposed to software development. So that was fine. I had the temerity to go on my honeymoon. So I was gone for a week, maybe it was a week and 1 day, something like that. I came back and I'm going to call him Al. This was not his name. Al had managed the client for me, I came back to an answering machine. Yes, 36 years ago, we had answering machines where there must have been 6 messages from the other software developer in increasing levels of concern. Mark and I walked into our apartment that night when we got back, and I was very happy. It was my honeymoon. It was in the sun. It was in the Caribbean. It was wonderful. And he said to me, "You need to get on a plane tomorrow to go to Detroit because Al has really screwed up this customer." And I said, "I'm not doing that. I'm going to come into work. You're going to tell me what's going on. I'm going to hear from Al." I mean, how much could he have done in a week, right? In just a little over a week, he had totally changed the customer from somebody who wanted to work with us to somebody who never wanted to talk to us again. So that kind of interference with everything. He tried to tell the software developer how to change the algorithm. The mechanical engineer was only hanging on until I came back because he was all set to quit. The this is a VP, right? Al was a VP, and he had actually changed the structure of the fixture in our test bed. I mean, he interfered with all of the work all the way around. It was horrible. So that was the worst manager I ever had. I've had plenty of other managers who wanted to rank everybody in a 150 person department. That was just stupid. I mean, there are plenty of other things. So, yeah.
Thank you, Johanna. I'm gonna use the icon to give you a round of applause.
Well, I'd like to hear
Uh,
what Johanna did about Al. Did she just?
Oh, so I'm so shy and retiring. So I walked into Al's office and I said, you know me, David. I'm 5 feet tall on a very good day. I leaned on the desk. I looked him straight in the eye and I said, "You expletive deleted, expletive deleted, expletive deleted. You talk to my expletive customer again, I will shoot you." And then I walked out. And then I went to my boss and I said, I swore. I should not have sworn. That probably did not win me any points. And he actually said to me, I had a boss in a different part of the organization. He actually said to me, Al is a bully, so you actually did exactly the right thing. Now, why would a senior leadership team allow a bully to be a VP? I don't get it. I don't get it. So I did a lot of work. I was on a plane the next Monday. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. And while you're still with us, I am